Okay, we're gonna be going over the digestive system. And in the digestive system, there are the seven functions, which is mechanical processing, which is chewing, digestion, which is um, where they have like acids and enzymes to break something apart. And they have secretion to release substances to help you like digest your food. Like for the mouth, they have salmon amylase that kind of helps you like, oh, that's in digestion, but it kind of like helps like break it down more. And then there's absorption where your stomach, intestine, it brings things to your body that you had already digested, like proteins, carbs, and lipids. And there's excretion where you excrete with urine, sweat, and feces, and compaction where that prevents you from pooping all the time. So, the accessory organs and all endocrine glands secreting substances to GI tract and alimentary canal to help you with movement and digesting and processing food. And the GI tract takes you from the oral cavity to the anus. So there's this, which is like showing like all the small intestines over here and the large intestines over here, and it's breaking apart the small intestine, duodenum, duodenum, ileum. So this one is the mucosa. So it comes with mucosa, submucosa, muscularis, and serosa. And mucosa is what secretes mucus in its epithelial tissue, and it also varies along the GI tract. While the submucosa is the one that has areolar tissue, so that's why there's like blood vessels and lymph. The muscularis, it's for peristalsis. So this is like what helps move the food. And then serosa is kind of like the serous membrane that kind of like lubricates it. While adventitia, it's like what is you use for that's not in serosa. That if it's not serosa, then it's adventitia. And it's in things like the esophagus because those things are the exiting and you don't want things to anchor in place, so you use adventitia. So for the layers of the GI tract, there's a mucosa that is released through friction and erosion from food. So every 7 days, your body replaces it, and there's and it's in your mouth, pharynx, esophagus, and oral cavity, and then anal canal. It's lined with non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelial cells. And then next. And then other secretions, it has like hydrochloric acid into your stomach and digestive enzymes into your intestines. And there's enteroendocrine cells that secrete hormones into the body. So bodies have special cells that see what is going through the digestive system and put hormones into cardiovascular system. So underneath the epithelial tissue, right? So we have the mucosa right here, where it's pointing at right here. So mucosal epithelium, and then we have the lamina propria. Oh, basically, it has a basement membrane connected to areolar connective tissue. So it allows the body to have blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, and space. And next, the mucosa, it's like patrols the GI tract to make sure pathogens don't go to your body from the food that you eat. So it is associated with the lymphatic tissue. And the last part would be the muscularis mucosa. And the muscularis mucosa is basically a thin layer of smooth muscle. It's muscularis mucosa, it's right here. And a couple of cells of thick and smooth muscle. So this kind of stretches and folds up the mucosa to help increases the surface area. And there's folds in the lumen because of muscularis. So mucosa layer is scrunching up and folding up because it gives us more surface area so we do more digestion and absorption. So you can see it over here. Next layer out we have is the submucosa. This one is filled with areolar connective tissue, which gives it more space. It binds the mucosa to the muscularis. And contains cardiovascular flow, lots of blood vessels, and lymphatic vessels. And it contains specialized neurons called the submucosal plexus. And the job is to regulate or control rate of secretion of the glands into your lumen. You don't want to waste time of secreting substances in the GI tract when there's no food in there to digest. So it kind of helps like senses what is going on in the GI tract and is there food in there. While we have the muscularis, this one is muscle tissue. So it's skeletal muscle in the mouth, pharynx, in the superior half of the esophagus, and in the anal sphincter. So the so upper part of the GI tract of mouth and down half of esophagus is going to be skeletal muscle, and you can control this voluntarily, while the anal sphincter are voluntary control. So the rest of the GI tract is made up of smooth muscle. The lower half and esophagus all the way down to the last portion of anus canal. So the GI tract is made up of two layers. So let me show you guys. The muscularis right here, and then two layers is more nerves called the mesenteric plexus, and the plexus at Alberbrock job is to regulate the movement of substances through the GI tract. And then when there's food here and here, these are going to help control when the cell fibers in the muscularis contract and propel food and other substances through GI tract. So there's an inner layer, the cells fibers run circularly around the tube, and an external layer where the fibers run longitudinally down the tube. And the stomach is the third layer of smooth muscle. And then the outermost layer, we're talking about serosa. So serosa is areolar connective tissue with simple squamous epithelium. Its job is to secrete serous fluid into the abdominal pelvic cavity to make sure there's lubrication and the internal organs do not get stuck on each other. And it's important that the pharynx, esophagus, and rectum don't have this because you have adventitia, which is areolar connective tissue. This does not secrete serous fluid. And the pharynx, esophagus, rectum, thoracic cavity, and cranium, the last part of it, are there like extricating ones. So you don't want to lubricate them, and anchor them. You don't want to lubricate them, but you want to anchor them, which is why you use adventitia, because those things are like exiting, you know. Okay, so segmentation is when you movement that occurs when you want to churn. So it's like to break food in the GI tract. It occurs in your stomach, small intestine, and smaller, larger part of the large intestine. So it's circular and longitudinal layers of smooth muscle that contracts in a localized area. And the goal is not to move food along, but squish it back and forth. So the circular layers will contract and push the food, and the longitudinal layers will squish the food back and forth. So it's two. So the circular one is like bringing it together like this, like, squeezing, and then while the longitudinal will squish it back and forth. Both work to to mix the food together. So we have peristalsis. This one propels and moves the food through the digestive tract. It's through the esophagus, small and large intestines. So its circular layer of smooth muscle contract behind food, while longitudinal layers will contract in front of the food. And after that area contracts, the food will move a little bit. So we're going to talk about the peritoneum. These are like, that one is the largest serous membrane in the body, and it's made of areolar connective tissue plus simple squamous epithelium. So it's made of pericardia and pleural membrane. So the layer outside the abdominal pelvic cavity is the parietal layer, and the layer up against the organ is the visceral layer, and the peritoneal cavity is the space between the two layers of the peritoneum. So this one secretes serous fluid and it gets reabsorbed back into the cardiovascular system and recycled. And it's important that you have lubrication because there's a lot of movement. The serous membrane wraps around and folds around every single organ. So it wraps the small intestine, uterus, superior portion of the bladder, large intestine, And there's a lot of lymph nodes in the peritoneal membrane, and the organs behind the peritoneal membrane would be called retroperitoneal, which means behind. Like for example, kidneys, pancreas, and then small parts of the large intestine and which is like the sigmoid colon. So, um, so we have the peritoneal cavity, right? And then the ones that are, so you see sigmoid colon is right over here. So this is behind kidney. Wait, so it was kidney. It's not on here. And pancreas, which is right here. So these ones are the ones behind. So they're called retroperitoneal, behind the little serous, this peritoneum. So we're going to talk about mesenteries. These are basically folds of the peritoneum. Okay, so each fold, so we have the great omentanum. This is the largest fold. It has a lot of fatty, it's a kind of like a fatty apron because it holds adipose tissue. It connects the stomach and the duodenum, um, and sends down pelvis and holds back up. You kind of lift this. You can lift this up because it is one of the large folds of peritoneal membrane with adipose tissue. It's a lot of lymph nodes and important have proper immune responses for things traveling your abdominal cavity. So it's important as you process and bring these things to your digestive tract. Okay. And the way I remember this is called like they call it great fat apron because it's like a big fat immune apron covering guts. The kind of trick, so it's a great aromative. So, it kind of looks like an apron and it's like used for, lymph nodes, which is kind of like for immunity. And then we have the falciform ligament. This is a fold of the peristemium. It's not a true ligament because it's not attached to the bone, but it helps anchor the liver in place. So, so falciform is kind of like falcon, a liver seatbelt. So falcon wing between liver lobes is how I can remember it. So it holds it down. And yeah, it anchors the liver. We have the lesser omentum. This one is underneath the liver and it connects the stomach, the liver, and the duodenum and this first part of the small intestine together. It contains major blood vessels like the hepatic artery and the hepatic portal vein. And it's a common bile duct to allow bile to liver to gallbladder to small intestine. So lesser omentum, it's kind of like called a small but important hose, a small strap but for blood supply. We have the mesentery proper, which connects the lower two-thirds of the small intestines of the duodenum to the ileum of the posterior cavity wall. It provides stability for the small intestine to make sure they don't fall outwards from the abdominal pelvic cavity. So the mesentery proper, this one is the mesh holding the small intestine. That's how you can remember. Small intestines, duodenum, and ileum. Because the duodenum is already with the lesser omentum, right? So mesentery as in mesh, and then mesh holds small intestines of the duodenum and ileum. We have the mesocolon, which is behind the transverse colon, and this one holds the large intestine to posterior abdominal wall. So it's made up of two folds. And if the peritoneum gets damaged, the abdominal pelvic organs will fall out of place and sag down and form weakening. This one results in hernia because if parts of your colon starts to stand out of your from your abdominal pelvic island. So mesocolon anchors large intestine colon, right? So colon hanger holds the colon. And basically, there's also a disease called peritonitis, which is the infection in the peritoneum membrane. And this is because bacteria got into the peritoneal membrane, or like there's a virus because of bacterium. This one could be a result of abdominal surgery, like appendix, colon, small intestine, stomach ruptures, and leak feces into the abdominal pelvic cavity. Okay, so for oral cavity, right, we have, let's go through the parts of it. Okay, so we have the lips, which is called the labia, inferior, superior, inferior. The space between the labia and the teeth is called vestibule, right here, vestibule. It is, superior, inferior. Superior wall of the oral cavity. So we have the palate right here. So we have the hard palate, which is over here, soft palate over there. Hard palate is basically the maxilla and the palatine bone with mucous membrane, while the soft palate is just mucus and mucous membrane. The little dangling structure right here, uvula, right? So this prevents food and liquid from entering your nose when you swallow. So it has muscles when you swallow it and goes to your nasopharynx. So we have tonsils, right? The lymphatic tissue in oral cavity and pharynx. So we have the lingual tonsil, which is underneath the tongue, right here. We have the palatine tonsils, right here, and the pharyngeal tonsils, which is over here. And the opening in the back of the mouth leads to the pharynx. We have salivary glands. Okay, there's like about 3 pairs, and they secrete 1 to 1.5 liters of saliva per day. Um, Saliva, so water buffers the keep pH of 6.5 slightly acidic, and it has ions, digestive enzymes like salivary amylase, which is the enzyme that digests the starch in your food into simple sugars, an antibacterial enzyme. So when you chew on a cracker, right, it's not very sweet, but because it's starch, the salivary amylase will break it down to starch and then make it taste sweet. So that's the reason why we can they have gustatory receptors or taste buds. Um, the reason why we salivate is to dissolve food so you can taste it with gustatory receptors or taste buds. And it protects your body from any microbes that might be in your food. Okay, so we have different glands. Let me talk to you guys about them. Okay, so we have the largest salivary gland, which is the parotid glands that are at the upper level part of the oral cavity. And it gets triggered by extremely sour or extremely sweet foods. So we have the submandibular gland, which is the inferior of the 3 glands has a duct that emerges laterally to lingual frenulum. Sublingual gland sits under the tongue, and this one secretes saliva. And if there's salivary glands that get infected, right? And what kind of happens is it attacks the parotid gland most frequently, and they usually have like a little bump by their face, and it can cause like high fever, malaise, tired, and it can travel. So, once you get it right, you can travel from your saliva to the overall throughout your body and affect ovaries, testicles, and it can lead to inflammation and sterilization. And if it spreads to the central nervous system, it can affect the meningitis and meningitis, and it can cause the swelling of the brain. And some people could even lose hearing. So for the tongue, right? Okay, let's move on to the tongue. So it's skeletal muscle covered with mucous membrane. which means skeletal muscle, voluntary. Okay, so it also creates lingual lipase. It breaks down fats in your mouth. It's anchored to three bones, the hyoid, the styloid, and the mandible. And there are special nerves receptors for different chemicals and taste things. We have teeth. Um, okay, so we have teeth in areolar processes and mandible and maxilla, right? So we have gingivae, which is the gum that covers the alveolar process. Okay. The gingiva is this one right here, right? Your gums, and it's a type of mucous membrane with connective tissue. Your teeth is held on into your mandible and maxilla by ligaments. There is a periodontal ligament that holds each tooth in place. We have the crown, neck, and root. So we have the external layer, the enamel, which is the covers the crown, is the hardest substance in the body and has super high concentration of salts and protects tooth from wear and tear. So if people get dental filling or porcelain, it's never the same because the enamel is the strongest. The dentin is like helps anchor the tooth to the parotidial ligament. It's strong, it's hard, but it's not as strong as the enamel. While the tooth cavity is space with connective tissue. There's room for blood vessels, nerve endings, lymphatic capillaries to move to that canal area. So the root canal is kind of extension of the poop, poop cavity down into the root. So we have incisors that kind of cut foods, canines that are for tearing, premolars that are for grinding, and molars that are for also for grinding. So we have sets or dententations. So deciduous is baby teeth, while permanent is called like secondary, you know. And there is periodontal disease. Okay. This one is the inflammation and decay of the gingiva. So this occurs when you have inflammation and decay, and it starts there and it can attack the enamel of your teeth. So this is from bacteria infection, right? So like if it's why is this caused? Poor dental hygiene, smoking, and it can be passed between people. So like it's very contagious. And you can trade bacteria between your mouth and it can spread to the rest of your body and cause other diseases. Okay, so we have the pharynx and the esophagus. This one is used by the respiratory and digestive enzymes. So the pharynx is the mucosal layer lined with stratified squamous epithelium. The muscularis layer is lined with skeletal muscle. You can voluntarily or consciously control your pharynx. Pharynx is this area, so we have nasal pharynx, oral pharynx, and the lingual pharynx down here. So Um, there's seven openings total. So there's two openings for the nasal cavity, two openings for the eustachian cavity, oral cavity, glottis, and an opening to the esophagus. So yeah, okay. Esophagus. This is this long, long tube right there. It's the passageway to the stomach. And there's no digestion here. So its mucosa is stratified squamous epithelium, and it's protection from abrasion as your food passes down it. Because your food is rough and stuff like that. So, and for it passes through the esophageal hiatus to get through your thoracic cavity down into the abdominal cavity. So the esophageal opening in some people, the esophagus can wiggle, and if it opens up and becomes weak, part of your stomach can move back to your thoracic cavity. So there is a hernia
which is where organ is sticking into a hole into an area where it's not supposed to be. So hiatal hernia or esophageal hernia causes problems like acid reflux disease, where stomach acid goes up esophagus and causes discomfort as acid irritates your esophagus. So, we were talking about the hernia, right? It's a little hole, right? And it goes to your esophagus. The acid reflux goes back, right? And it can cause the irritate your esophagus. So, little hole, that's what it means. And we also have two splinters. Okay, so the splinter is a ring of muscle to close off the tube and regulate. So we have the first upper esophageal splinter, right? This one is the ring of smooth muscle below. And friends, and it allows you to control when you bring food down. While the lower esophageal splinter regulates when food goes from your esophagus into your stomach. So the voluntary phase. This is the part where you have control over. You chew food, and anything you have a chunk of food that goes to your passing through your GI tract is going to be called a bolus. Okay, so the tongue pushes the food through towards the pharynx, and the esophagus is closed off because person is breathing. Esophagus was up, glottal opening. And he is still breathing air down the larynx into his lung. So we look at the steps, right? So this is just the voluntary phase. So what you have control over. So it's just pushing the food down. That's what it is. The esophagus currently is closed, but as he pushes it down, um, the esophagus is closed because the person's breathing. Next, we have the the pharyngeal stage. This is the pharynx is going to do all the work. The uvula is going to move upwards to close off the nasal pharynx, and this prevents food or liquid from going up into the nasal cavity. So we have skeletal muscles in the pharynx, and it's going to contract to push bolus down the esophagus. The epiglottis is folded over and closing over the glottis to larynx, so food doesn't go to trachea. The upper esophageal splinter is going to relax, opening. Okay, so basically the steps, right? So it's going to prevent food or liquid from going up into your nasal canal. You don't want that to happen. So, and then the skeletal muscle in the pharynx are going to contract to push the bolus down the esophagus. The epiglottis is folded over and closing off the glottis to larynx so food doesn't go to the trachea. We have the upper esophageal splinter is going to relax and allow you to open. It's going to open up so the esophagus to allow food to get pushed down. So uvula comes up, epiglottis needs to come down and close up the larynx. Skeletal muscle must contract to help it push it down. And upper esophageal splinter must relax so it can go into the esophagus. We have the esophageal stage, right? This is peristalsis. This is deconstruction. This is swallowing part. So there's circle of muscles that go around the esophagus. And they're gonna contract and push bolus of the food towards your stomach. And the last thing that happens is the lower esophageal splinter must open. And if the stomach's not ready, the lower esophageal splinter will remain closed and prevent bolus from entering your stomach until it is ready. So we have the stomach, and this one basically stores food until intestines are ready to process it. So the stomach is capable of storing a lot of food and highly expandable and stretchable. It mixes food with stomach acids and enzymes and continues to work on digestion. So the oral cavity with chewing, it starts the process of food digestion, salivary amylase, and lingual lipids. But the stomach does do a bit of absorption. It absorbs water and alcohol and any carbs or intestines that didn't or large lipids that get absorbed in intestines. It is part of the endocrine system because it releases a hormone called gastrin into your stomach, and this is um it it gets released into your bloodstream, sorry. And then this tells your stomach when your body when it's full. Okay, so we have different parts. Okay, so we have the cardia, where the esophagus enters, closest to the heart. We have the fundus, which is the portion pouch above the cardia, and it's used for extra storage. We have the body, which is the main region, the pyloric antrum right here, pyloric canal, and pylorus, and which is the final bit that has smooth muscle. Okay. So the stomach has folds called rugae. Um, and this one allows the increase in the surface area so you can digest more foods by releasing more enzymes and gastric juices. So it allows the stomach to stretch and expand to accommodate more food. So we have stomach histology. So the mucosa is the underdoing surface with holes called gastric pits. The pits go are like down like long tubes that extend are gastric glands. So gastric glands have four different cells. They have the mucosa cell, which is called the goblet cell, that secretes mucus into the stomach. This is important because the stomach is filled with hydrochloric acid, and without that mucus, you can digest your own stomach, causing an ulcer. Okay. We have the parietal cells, which is basically secretes the intrinsic factor. Um, it's a special hormone and it absorbs vitamin B12. It secretes HCl acid in the stomach and makes acid that allows you to digest food. We have cheese cells that secrete enzymes to break down food. And the pepsinogen, it breaks down proteins and gastric lipids and breaks down fat. And we have enteroendocrine cells, which are kind of called G cells. They secrete the gastrin, the one that makes you feel full. So, the mucus cell secretes mucus, parietal cells secrete the HCl acid, parietal like pirates want to eat food, so it secretes the acid so you can eat food. Chief cells secretes enzymes to break down food. So the chief it tells you to go break down the boxes, so go break down the food. And then exoendocrine's like, oh, I'm full. So food entering makes me feel full. You know what I mean? Okay. And then we have three layers of smooth muscle. We have oblique, which is the inner, circular, and longitudinal, and it allows the stomach to churn and break food. And submucosa is the same thing with the serous layer. Okay, so submucosa and serosa are similar to the rest of the digestive system. Mhm. So we're gonna start on the mechanical digestion. So this one basically breaks down apart food by trying food, by using all three layers of muscle layers. Okay, so first step, we have the propulsion and retropropulsion. This one moves the food back and forth within the stomach. The chemicals of your stomach help further break down food into becomes a liquid called chyme. Chyme is basically a partially digested food and not small enough for body to absorb. And the rest of your digestion has to occur in the intestines before your body brings those molecules in the cardiovascular space in the lymphatic system to feed your body. So basically, the propulsion, right, moves the food back and forth, and then it becomes a liquid. And then um the chyme is basically partially digested food. But so rest of digestion is gonna occur in the intestines after this. So it could feed the body. So it's just here, just like making it become liquid and then it goes down. Okay, so we have liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. So the pancreas is retroperitoneal, right? Remember what I said? Retroperitoneal would be pancreas, esophagus, what is it? Pancreas, kidney, and there was one more. And it's behind the stomach and its shape. Wait, let me find out which one is the peritoneum really quick. Okay, so kidneys, pancreas, and the small part of this large intestine. So the sigmoid. Okay, so this one right here. That's why it's together. Okay, so pancreas, the pancreas right here. That's behind. Small intestine, part of it. So it'd be the sigmoid colon and the kidney. Okay. Okay, let's go back to where we were. We were talking about the liver, gallbladder. Okay. So, let's start. Okay. So the main duct, so it has two ducts that carry pancreatic juice that helps it secrete into the small intestine. The main duct is called a pancreatic duct. It joins with the bile duct from the gallbladder to join the hepatopancreatic ampulla. And the opening is called a duodenal papilla, and it's this is the pancreas right here. And it's regulated by the sphincter called hepatopancreatic sphincter, and this ring of smooth muscle that regulates when the juices from the pancreas and the bile duct are allowed to go to the small intestine. We have the small branch, which is called the accessory duct. This is the minor duodenum papilla is opening for the accessory duct, and they both lead to the duodenum. See? So pancreas is right here, and then it leads to the duodenum, which is over here. So pancreatic islets are the endocrines. So it secretes glucagon and insulin into the bloodstream, while the pancreas acini is the exocrine. So this one secretes the pancreatic juice. So, acini likes to have a good time, so they're gonna have pancreatic juice. It's kind of remember it. So, and it has buffers taking the HCl acid coming out of your stomach and neutralizing it so it doesn't damage the rest of your digestive system. So if you burn the HCl acid to the intestine, you will burn a hole. We have digestive enzymes like the pancreatic amylase that digest starches like trypsin, chymotrypsin, carbopeptide, lactase. And it secretes pancreas lipase to further digest lipids and fats. We have special enzymes like ribonuclease and deoxyribonuclease that helps digest amino acids. So that's about the pancreas. Yeah. So I was telling you guys there's the main duct and the small duct. Yeah, it is. And then let's go to the liver now. This one is the largest internal organ. And what it does is it recycles old red blood cells, activates vitamin D, metabolism, so and detoxifies drugs, like when you drink a lot of alcohol, they're like it's gonna affect your liver, right? So detoxifies drugs, produces bile, emulsifies liquids for digestion. So there's lots of macrophages that can engulf a bacteria, anything travel through the cardiovascular or lymphatic system. So there's the integumentary system, which produces vitamin D when cholesterol gets hit by sunlight. Liver converts activated cholesterol into vitamin D to help with intestines to absorb calcium. The liver is important for metabolism and storage for carbs, lipids, and proteins after the body absorbs it. It will bring the liver and release to the cardiovascular system when cells need it. So it detoxifies, removes hormones and steroids from the cardiovascular system. And it produces bile, and it's a liquid that intestines need to digest lipid. So it emulsifies, so if there's no bile, the lipids sit on the surface on top of chyme and does not get mixed in and digested. And when you make salad dressing, and oil sticks on top, right? So as the liver produces bile, the bile gets placed in hepatic ducts. Hepatic ducts carry the bile from the liver. So it goes from the left lobe to the right. And it will merge into a large duct and leave a liver called the common hepatic duct. The gallbladder has its own duct called the cystic duct to transport the bile. And this is where the cystic and the common duct merge. The common bile duct merges with the pancreatic duct to form the hepatopancreatic ampulla and put bile into the small intestine and right at the hepatopancreatic ampulla site. So we have two vessels that bring blood. We have the hepatic portal vein, which takes all the blood after it leaves to our small intestine and large intestine, and brings the liver for further processing. It's called a portal because there are capillary beds in your intestines and capillary beds in your liver. The hepatic portal vein is taking it from one capillary bed to another capillary bed, bringing blood from the intestines and digestive enzymes to the liver so you can process all your nutrients you absorb. So the liver needs to get blood and oxygen, so it comes from the hepatic artery. While the hepatic vein, it goes straight from the liver into the inferior vena cava and allows blood to return to the heart. The liver has a large blood supply, and the hepatic artery delivers oxygenated blood to the aorta. The hepatic portal vein is delivering nutrient-rich blood from the digestive system, and hepatic vein is going to take blood back to the inferior vena cava. So the cells of the liver is called hepatocytes. Its function is endocrine metabolic, and it makes bile. Okay, so I kind of wanted to show you guys a little bit more about which one was it? So yeah, I was telling you guys, right? So here's bile from the liver, it goes to the left, to the right, merge into the larger duct. So left to right, a larger duct, right? And then it has goes to the gallbladder. And then to the cystic. So let's talk about the ability to make bile. So biokinetically takes bile from hepatocytes. Hepatocytes are these little guys, these little cells in between. And they merge to make bile ductiles and empty bile through bile duct and merge to larger and larger ducts called the common bile duct. Surrounding hepatocytes are channels that hold blood. Hepatic sinusoids that hepatites are able to process in order to produce bile. So it takes some plasma from cystosoids and removes waste we want to get rid of. So it produces bile salts to emulsify lipids in the digestive system. Anything they don't use goes back to the hepatic cystosoids and it filters the blood. So let's go through it. This is the biokinetic right? Taking bile from the hepatocytes. And it then goes to the hepatic cystosoids. These little the branches of the hepatic portal vein and artery vein. It leads to the central vein that merges through the oh yeah. So hepatic cystosoids are um the hepatites are able to process in order to produce bile. So it takes in plasma from cystosoids and removes waste and wants to get rid of and produces bile salts to emulsify lipids in the digestive system. So anything that doesn't don't use, you go back to hepatic cystosoid, aka filtering the blood. So blood goes into hepatic cystosoids from the branches of hepatic portal vein and um and the artery right here. And they feed into cystosoid blood levels. So there's a hepatic triad. There's a bile duct, hepatic portal vein branch, and hepatic artery branch. The central vein is 1, 2 right here. So blood coming in through branches enter to the hepatic cystosoids and leave through the central vein. And hepatic sites take in blood plasma and turn that bile that goes into bile canaliculate and then eventually burn into bile ductile and leave through the bile duct. So the blood is going from the triad to central vein, and the bile is going to go to canal towards the bile duct. So what's in bile? So bile is going to have water, bile salts, and bile pigments, which is a variety of leftover or end products left over from breaking down red blood cells from and it looks like um oh no, bilirubin is looks yellow, green, or brown. There's a reason why our poop is brown. Because bile breaking down the old red blood cells, right? Where it's released feces. Okay, so basically, right, the gallbladder, it's water. Oh, sorry. The gallbladder stores and concentrates bile as needed. It has a neck, body, and fundus. It connects to the cystic duct, which allows it to make any take any leftover bile from the liver and store it in the event that you aren't digesting food. So liver is constantly producing bile, but you are not constantly eating food. So when you don't want you to waste your bile, your hepatic pancreatic sphincter closes when no food goes and starts to back up, and bile will move up the cystic duct and get stored in the gallbladder. So gallbladder can concentrate bile and remove water and stay behind bile salts and bilirubin. So when you eat a large lunch, right, the hepatopancreatic sphincter opens up and squeezes on the gallbladder and squirt extra bile into your small intestine. So essentially, what happens here is we have the gallbladder holding the bile, right? And what it's doing, it's processing it. So it's concentrating it, it's removing water, and it's leaving behind, the important stuff like the bile salts and the bilirubin. So the hepatopancreatic ampulla. This one opens up and squeezes on the gallbladder. We have gallstones. These are crystals of cholesterol or bilirubin in your gallbladder. So if they're large enough, they can obstruct the flow of bile into your duodenum. So this would block the cystic duct and cause pain if they try to move through the air. And if there's too much cholesterol in your blood, right? There's be a cholesterol gallstone, which is it looks a little yellow from a lot of fat. There's a rare one is the bilirubin gallstone, and this is black from breaking down pigment of the red blood cells. And this can be a sign of cirrhosis or hepatitis, and it can cause like jaundice. So the treatment it would be remove it, take drugs, or just, like calcistectomy. You can dissolve it or just remove it, like with the surgery procedure, calcistectomy. And yeah, it just removes the whole thing. Just snipe it out, like snip it out. And then we have the small intestine. This one forms most of the in digestion and absorption. So when you die, the intestine is longer because the muscularis layer relaxes and the small intestine stretches out. So we have the duodenum, right? This one's a small little part right here, right? And it's 1 foot long. It goes from the pyloric splinter to the stomach and has a minor and major duodenum ampulla opening for pancreatic juice and bile to leave through. It's retroperitoneal, so this is what I was. So it's the kidney, the pancreas, and the duodenum, right? This is the shortest section. Duodenum is 3 feet long. It's to the left side, while the ileum is 6 feet and it's the majority of the small intestine. It ends with the ileocecal sphincter that controls the flow from the small to the large intestine. And the lumen is smaller than the duodenum. So, small intestine histology. We have the mucosa, which is the simple columnar epithelium. We have goblet cells that secrete mucus. And we have the lamina propria, which connects the mucosa down to the submucosa underneath. So lamina propria goes up and down, creating villi, and muscularis mucosa goes straight across. 2 layers of smooth muscle in muscularis. And serosa has a serous membrane that secretes serous fluid on the outside of the small intestine. So we do have a few features that increase the surface area So it's gonna be the circular folds. This one is the folds and ridges in the walls of the intestines. So it kind of looks like a vacuum hose, and it causes the liquid chyme to bump, swirl, and spiral through the small intestine, which mixes it. So you see, it's like little, if you have more folds, it's gonna absorb more. We have the villi, which is the entire mucosa layer, um, and it's the projections, it shags the carpet like up and down, right? So of course you're gonna absorb more through that. Microvilli extends often to increase surface area. And the reason why small intestines it's interested to have this is because you want to maximize nutrient absorption, and then more surface area equals more chances you have to take nutrients from the chyme and bring to the body and absorb to the cardiovascular system and lymphatic system and use the nutrients. Because if the small intestine was smooth, it will go straight through and it'll never absorb into your body. So villi, right? So villi has its own sets of capillaries. So it has lymphatic capillaries, and it's digestion in the small intestine, such segmentation and porize to help break down food. And it has cells that line mucosa and epithelial cells that secrete more enzymes. And there are specific enzymes that like break only like one type of lipid or one type of protein. Yeah. And another thing we have is called celiac disease. So this is triggered by gluten, and what happens is the linings of the intestine get damaged and shred off. So the villi is destroyed. So you have smooth small intestine. And in result, you can't digest your food. And it causes bloating, chronic diarrhea, and it causes malnutrition. So we have the large intestine, which contains the cecum, right? Which is the little pouch. And it has the ileocecal sphincter that helps regulate the flow chine from the small intestine to a large intestine. We have the appendix, which is the long, skinny one. It houses microbacteria, because if you don't have bacteria, you get sick. And if you get clogged with chyme, if you're dehydrated, it can encrust the appendix and block it up. And when it blocked off, the bacteria will proliferate and the appendix can burst open, which is causes appendicitis, which if ruptured, it would release all the bacteria to abdominal pelvic cavity and trigger peritonitis, where the peritoneal membrane becomes inflamed and becomes gangrenous in the abdominal cavity, which is why we have the appendicectomy, which removes the appendix and seal it closed. So the immune system is yeah. But with no immune appendix, the immune system is inhibited. We have the large intestine over here. Um, so basically we have like a colon. Um, yeah, I was gonna tell you guys. We have a colon, right? We have ascending, transverse, descending, and a sigmoid colon. And this one has two layers of smooth muscle that makes up muscularis. Um, and the ridge is called tendini colli. It's made of a longitudinal muscles, and each pouch is haustra. So there's circular muscles, no longitudinal, because yeah, we have the rectum and the anal canal, which has an external and internal anal sphincter. We have the large intestine that leads down to an intestinal gland, but there's no villi because it's flat. And they have long projections with simple columnar epithelial tissue. So there's lots of goblet and absorption cells to absorb the water. And by the time the chyme gets to the large intestine, most of the nutrients get absorbed. So the large intestine's job, what it does is absorb water, right? And this is the area where the chyme um goes from the liquid to a solid. So most of the chyme has been digested and broken down, and anything left over bacteria in the large intestine will process. And it helps you convert chyme into useful vitamins that you can absorb. Example, so vitamin K and vitamin B created by bacteria, large intestine. And if there's no bacteria, you become malnourished. The large intestine does not function properly like rate of movement through large intestine. The chyme doesn't spend time in the large intestine and gets flushed out quickly, which causes diarrhea. Diarrhea is the rate of movement in the colon and it's way too fast, so you don't have enough time to absorb the remaining water. Diarrhea is deadly. It can cause dehydration, ion imbalance, and dangerous for any one infants or elderly. So constipation is when the rate of movement through colon and and there's too much water. So it can be delayed defecation. And if the feces are hard, it can damage the colon because cholesterol and waste will build up the bloodstream because you aren't removing bile. Okay, we have intestinal microbial incubation. So this one's immunocompromised. Most bacteria are helpful. Antibiotics help prevent infections caused by bad bacteria. So antibiotics can kill most bacteria and it can cause you to be kill also healthy ones. So we have the Colostrum difficile, and this one is difficult to kill. Normally, it lives in people's body, but there's a health bacteria keeping it in check. It can multiply and take over the body, and the major signs would be constant bloody diarrhea, anemic, and malnourished. And you must stay in the hospital on IVs. The treatment would be more antibiotics and fecal transplant, where they take poop from another family and you put it in the colon to release it into the intestine to, for the good bacteria. We have the anal canal. Um, this one has the stretching and folding of the mucous membrane. The internal band is smooth muscle called an internal anal sphincter. This one stretches and triggers defecation and it will stretch. An external one is the one that you can control. So when you poop, you can close it and feces back into the rectum and back into the sigmoid colon and hold it there. So yeah. And colorectal cancer is colonoscopy. It's from poor diet, from not having enough fiber, and genetics, alcohol or HPV. Yeah. No, no.